They never really give our athletes their flowers for how incredible they are. And when you've been to 3 Grand Slam finals by the age of 21, you are exceptional. There are few tennis players in history who've accomplished as much as this young woman has, but you wouldn't know it by listening to some of that commentary. That's why I and so many other people just watch the match and drown out the noise. And I hope Coco and the rest of our players continue to do the same.
Coco Gauff stormed into Saudi Arabia for the WTA finals and didn't just win, she dismantled the top 2 players on the planet, one right after the other. Picture the scene. She is clutching that trophy, barely 20 years of age. But instead of popping bottles and soaking in the glory, she took to social media with a statement that went straight for the jugular. She posted about crushing the bad season myths, silencing the doubters, and shutting down the noise that had haunted her for months. That single caption exposed a truth most people are too scared to whisper. Ask yourself, why is the 3rd best player on earth a woman who clawed her way to a Grand Slam final and snatched up multiple titles, forced to constantly prove she isn't a total failure? The system simply refuses to give our athletes the flowers they have rightfully earned. And let's be real, reaching 3 Grand Slam finals before your 21st birthday is legendary status. Only a tiny fraction of players in history have touched the heights this young woman has. Yet, if you listen to the commentary booth, you would think she was barely scraping by. That is exactly why I and countless other real fans just watch the game and tune out the chatter. I pray Coco and the rest of the squad keep doing the exact same thing. Why on earth is a 20-year-old champion spending 30 minutes every single day blocking trolls online? The truth is ugly, and it goes way beyond tennis. What Gauff deals with daily rips the mask off a sports media bias that has been ignored for far too long. Young black female athletes face a completely different rulebook, judged with a sharper tongue, scrutinized under a hotter microscope, and granted far less patience than anyone else in the game. And the moment they dare to speak on anything outside the lines, the backlash is swift and vicious. This story starts with how the press treats Gauff, but it points to a much larger systemic rot. They wrote her obituary, predicting a total collapse. She won anyway. The media elites were so eager to see her fall, they actually forecast she would lose a semi-final match to a player ranked 361st in the world. Keep in mind, Gauff is sitting at number 2 in the global rankings. Since when do you see experts betting on the world number 2, a Grand Slam champ, to get knocked out by someone ranked 361? And before you brush this off as some random blogger's hot take, it wasn't. This came from Steve Tigner, the executive editor of Tennis Magazine. We are talking about the biggest publication in the sport. The double standards are blinding once you open your eyes. The real question is, why do we let this keep happening? Let's dissect what the media labeled Gauff's terrible run in 2024. Headlines everywhere screamed she was choking, slumping, and spiraling. Here is the cold, hard reality of that year. She hit the semis at the Australian Open, battled to the French Open final, swept titles in Auckland and Beijing, and finished the year ranked number 3 in the world. For anyone else, that is a career-defining season. For Coco, they branded it a disaster. The head of Tennis Magazine seemed so bitter about her win that he penned a piece dripping with venom just to describe it. Remember, this is the same expert who swore she was destined to lose to the underdog ranked 361st. He kept chalking her success up to luck, calling the match off-kilter rather than skilled. He labeled the victory scrappy, insisting there was absolutely no beauty in her performance. He even took shots at Gauff's mental game and swing, claiming that grit mattered more than actual talent that day, as if resilience is somehow a flaw. Excuse me? It gets worse, but honestly, the article was so biased you would swear Steve Tigner was on the opponent's payroll just to trash her. The hate train went full steam at the US Open when she dropped a match to Emma Navarro with 19 double faults. Suddenly, the vultures circled. Her serve was broken. Her confidence was shattered. She couldn't handle the big leagues. A single bad day on the court became the headline for her entire year, erasing months of brilliance. Tennis legend Andy Roddick called it out straight. He said the knives come out for Coco way faster than they do for the rest of the field. Coco herself said it best. The same stats that earn other players a standing ovation get her dragged through the mud. Identical performance. Polar opposite narratives, all depending on who is holding the racket. Instead of praising Gauff for snatching that second set with lightning speed, he claimed the ball was just sailing on Sabalenka, acting like Coco wasn't even on the court. And naturally, he wrapped up by downplaying Gauff's win, saying that while it was technically an upset, it wasn't really a surprise. This from the same guy who claimed she was going to lose to number 361. because their games were evenly matched. He simply refuses to speak the truth. Coco played lights out, and nobody on earth was taking that trophy from her that day. At just 20 years old, she has already bagged a Grand Slam, secured a top 3 world ranking, and achieved more than 99% of pros will in a lifetime. Yet, that resume isn't bulletproof enough to stop the flop allegations from flying after a single bad tournament, but she just keeps showing up. She grinds, she dominates, and like clockwork, the critics who spent months writing her obituary go abruptly silent. Your triumphs are relegated to the footnotes, while your stumbles are splashed across the front page. The bias becomes glaringly obvious once you open your eyes to it. When the men's tour struggles with mechanics, pundits break down the physics of the serve. The tone is technical, educational, and surprisingly forgiving. But when she hits the exact same slump, the narrative immediately pivots to her psyche, questioning her mental fortitude and asking if the pressure is too much. The script flips entirely. Tennis Channel. It is time to hand Steve Tiger his walking papers, because insulting the most dominant American talent of this generation is unacceptable. You have no right to complain about pickleball stealing your market share when you openly disrespect a generational talent who is statistically outpacing legends at her age. Just look at the energy surrounding Carlos Alcaraz. The kid is young, volatile, and drops matches he should easily bag, yet the media paints him as a future god who is simply finding his groove. He is gifted infinite patience. She is subjected to an interrogation about whether her prime is already behind her. They are peers navigating the same pressure cooker, yet the empathy freely given to him vanishes into thin air when the camera turns to her. This toxicity isn't unique to the court. It plagues every major league. When men take a stand on societal problems, they are hailed as courageous leaders. But when female athletes, especially black women, do the same, they are told to know their place. LeBron James builds schools and talks policy, and the world applauds him for leveraging his fame for the greater good. She follows that same blueprint, and her notifications explode with thousands of trolls demanding she shut her mouth and hit the ball. The velocity of the hate train exposes the prejudice. She drops one match and the internet is flooded with deep dives on her failed coaching and fragile mind before she even leaves the venue. Meanwhile, her rivals can tank 3 tournaments in a row without so much as a whisper in the press. The microscope she lives under isn't just powerful, it is weaponized, and the industry feigns ignorance to the disparity. She recently pulled back the curtain on a reality most pros are too terrified to admit. She dedicates 30 minutes of her daily routine solely to blocking hate accounts, not scrolling, not engaging, but actively filtering toxicity. That is a significant slice of her life wasted building a dam against a relentless flood of abuse that simply never recedes. And these aren't critiques of her backhand. They are vicious assaults on her looks, her bloodline, and her soul. They attack her intellect and ridicule the very sound of her voice. They treat every outfit, soundbite, and upload as forensic evidence to tear apart, and we aren't talking about a few bored teenagers. It is a coordinated legion of thousands, salivating for a slip-up, though she isn't the only warrior fighting this war. Caroline Garcia recently broke her silence on facing this exact nightmare. The unending artillery fire of hate, the vitriol after every defeat, and the crushing weight of knowing a faceless mob wants to strip away your self-worth. But the twist that makes this truly sickening is her age. She is only 20. While her peers are stumbling through adulthood in the safety of anonymity, making messy mistakes in the dark, she is growing up on a stage where every error is content fodder for critics who haven't accomplished 1% of her accolades. The psychological damage is tangible, and thank God the locker rooms are finally finding the voice to discuss it. Yet, the dialogue always hits a wall before acknowledging exactly who bears the brunt of the assault. There is a unique venom reserved for young black women that others simply do not face, and pointing it out only invites accusations of playing the victim card. It is a no-win scenario, yet she refuses to silence herself on the things that count. From grabbing the mic at protests to challenging Florida legislation, she wields her fame as a shield for justice and equality. And without fail, the response is a synchronized chant from the gallery. Focus on your serve. Stay in your lane. Nobody asked for your worldview. The moment she questioned her state's politics, the retort was instantaneous. Her feeds were drowned in thousands of demands to zip her lips and get back on the court. Conservative pundits churned out columns bashing her audacity, while radio personalities sneered at the idea that a girl with a racket could shift the culture. The subtext was written in neon lights. You exist to amuse us, not to make us think. We have seen this movie before with Serena Williams. Decades of fighting the same battles. Whenever she highlighted inequity or Bias. She was branded as hostile and difficult, slapped with fines for outbursts that male players committed with absolute impunity. Sit down, be thankful, and quit your whining. That was the directive. It is the same old song and dance for every generation of black sportswomen who refuse to stay silent, but flip the script to the men. When an NFL star launches a non-profit or speaks up on justice, he is hailed as a visionary, a real community pillar. The networks fawn over his responsible platform use. He lands on magazine covers as the face of modern activism, but when she pulls the exact same move, she is crossing the line. She is polarizing. She needs to just stick to sports. This double standard isn't flying under the radar. It is loud, it is aggressive, and its persistence proves it is by design. There is a very specific unease when young black women realize their voice carries weight beyond the scoreboard. That discomfort strips the mask off society, showing us exactly who gets to be a complex human and who is just a machine. Fast forward to Paris, 2024. Coco gets the nod to carry the flag for Team USA, a history-making moment. She wasn't just another pick. She was the youngest American tennis pro to ever hold that honor. And the best part? Her own teammates voted her in. The athletes sweating right next to her, the ones who know her grind and her heart, decided she was the one. You would expect a universal round of applause for that. Nope. The hate train left the station instantly. Social media turned into a dumpster fire. Why her? Why not Simone? She isn't decorated enough. Who is she anyway? The sheer level of disrespect was enough to make your stomach turn. We are talking about a 19-year-old U.S. Open champion, a top 3 global phenom who represents her flag with total class, and they treated her like a random amateur. Remember, the flag bearer isn't picked by some corporate committee in a boardroom. It is a locker room vote. Her fellow Olympians chose her out of respect, but that fact didn't matter to the critics one bit. They felt a burning need to announce that, in their eyes, she was an imposter. Even when her peers validated her, the public vetoed it. And there is the pattern again. Young black women see their wins minimized. Their milestones come with asterisks. There is always a "yeah" but attached to their glory. Simone Biles is the literal G-O-A-T of gymnastics, and she still has to dodge the same arrows. Naomi Osaka stacks up Grand Slam trophies only to hear she is all hype. The trophy case doesn't matter. It is never enough armor against a crowd determined to cut them down. But Coco? She stayed icy. She didn't feed the trolls. She gripped that flagpole with pride and represented the nation like royalty. But the tragedy is that she had to reprove her worth for an honor she already earned. That tells you everything about the invisible weight she carries. Then came the U.S. Open loss to Emma Navarro, and things got weird up in the broadcast booth. Tennis legend Chris Evert was on the mic, and fans at home started tilting their heads at the commentary. The narrative wasn't about what Navarro was doing right. It was entirely about what Coco was doing wrong. Every mistake was magnified. Every slip-up got the spotlight. The vibe was off. Twitter users flooded the timeline calling out the bias. They weren't hallucinating. If you rewind the tape, the difference in how these two women were discussed is night and day. Navarro played a lights-out match. She absolutely earned that W. But instead of praising her shots, the story became about Coco's collapse, her serve, her brain, her inability to clutch up. This isn't just one bad day. It is a plague in sports media. When an underdog white player beats a black icon, the headline isn't "Star is born." It is "Legend chokes." It is a subtle sleight of hand that robs one athlete of credit while dumping blame on the other. It happens so often you can set your watch to it. Now, compare that to the coverage when the young men lose. When Alcaraz or Sinner drop a match, the commentators can't stop talking about how well the opponent played. They talk about fatigue. They bring up injuries. They offer context. The language is soft, forgiving. But when Coco loses, it is dissected like a character flaw rather than a bad day at the office. This commentary bias is dangerous because it scripts the public's reality. Millions of people are watching these matches and subconsciously drinking in the narrative. When the voices of authority paint black female athletes as broken, it gives the casual fan permission to be cruel. Words have power. The framing dictates the story, and right now, the frame is crooked. So, after months of hearing she was washed, that she peaked too soon, that she couldn't handle the heat, she did what she does best. She let the racket do the talking. She shook up the squad, parting ways with Brad Gilbert and bringing in Matt Daly. The press had a field day with that choice, calling it another blunder, another sign of crumbling stability. She tuned them out and went to work. First came the China Open. She stormed to the title with a dominant display, barely breaking a sweat. Then came Wuhan, where she powered into the semifinals. Her swagger had returned. That serve was firing like a cannon. Suddenly, all those think pieces analyzing her broken mechanics looked absolutely foolish. But she saved her loudest statement for the WTA finals in November. It wasn't just about lifting the trophy. She dismantled the world number 1 and number 2 players, back-to-back. Iga Swiatek and Aryna Sabalenka, the two most terrifying forces in women's tennis, both fell to her racket when the pressure was at its peak. The very same athlete pundits spent months dismissing proved she owns a permanent spot at the summit of the sport. No debates, no caveats. Her post-match reaction said it all. When I win, that is my comeback. She didn't have to bicker with critics or write defensive essays on social media. She didn't need to post lengthy captions justifying her existence. She simply walked out and conquered the year's biggest tournament against the hardest lineup imaginable. That is the ultimate silence the haters move. And guess what happened next? The crowd that spent the entire year dragging her name through the mud suddenly lost their voices. The viral hot takes evaporated. The articles diagnosing what went wrong with Gauff vanished into thin air. Because when the scoreboard is that undeniable, even the loudest cynics are forced to take a seat and stay quiet, at least until her next defeat, when they will inevitably reboot the hate machine. Gauff is only 20 years old. She is already a Grand Slam queen, a WTA Finals champion, an Olympic flag bearer, and elite among the elite. She has stacked up more hardware before her 21st birthday than most pros dream of in a lifetime. Yet she is still constantly forced to re-audition for people who will never be pleased. She chooses to view the hate as flattery. After all, sky-high expectations just mean the world is actually watching. She mentioned keeping a childlike joy to handle the stress, and the press tried to weaponize that too. But she just transmuted it into fuel. That purity of focus, the ability to tune out the static and just ball, that is her superpower. The real question isn't about her anymore. Her resume speaks for itself. She has nothing left to prove. The question is why young black female athletes must grind twice as hard for half the glory. Why do their stumbles scream from the headlines while their triumphs whisper in the footnotes? Why are they commanded to shut up and play the moment they dare to express a thought that transcends the baseline? Why does the grace and patience given so freely to others suddenly evaporate when it is their turn? Her philosophy, however, is simple. Let the racket speak. Keep winning. Keep rising. Keep exuding excellence even when the world is hunting for flaws. She isn't holding her breath for the media to play fair. She isn't waiting for the internet to put down its pitchforks. She is out there ruling the court on her own terms, and honestly, that is the only comeback that truly counts.